Hi again, welcome to the next video for week 1 of term 2, the purpose of sleep and sleep deprivation. We've already touched a little bit about this in class, but now for some notes. Okay, so basically there are two theories of sleep, and we did go through these at the sleep lab, but like I said, you haven't had a chance to write down any notes, so here we go. The adaptive theory of sleep, or survival theories they're quite often called. So either you can use those terms, survival theories or adaptive theories of sleep. But basically, these theories propose that the sleep patterns of animals have been adapted according to a few things. Their need to find food, how vulnerable the animals are at certain times during the day, and their need to conserve energy. So basically, sleep is linked to survival. So, for instance, animals that graze a lot during the day, so they might need to eat for 20 hours a day, well, of course, they will sleep less because they spend so long looking for food or so long eating their food. Animals that perhaps are small animals and that can hide sleep more than animals that perhaps are large and don't have that ability to hide, so therefore are more exposed. So therefore they don't want to sleep because they would obviously then make themselves quite vulnerable. And also the need to conserve energy. So hibernating animals sleep in the winter when food is scarce. So basically, people that believe these theories link all of our behaviours back to the fact that we are animals. There are problems with this particular theory, and that's the fact that it implies sleep is useful rather than essential. So it ensures survival or aids survival, but doesn't really talk about the fact that, well, if we don't sleep, we die. So it assumes that we sleep to stay safe, but the loss of awareness when you sleep makes you actually more vulnerable. So even though it says small animals can hide and sleep more, when they do sleep, even though they sleep more, they're actually more vulnerable because they are sleeping. So it sort of contradicts its theory. Let's move on to the next theory of sleep, which is the restorative theories. So people who believe restorative theories of sleep basically see sleep as restoring our bodies after a hard day. So it helps us recharge our bodies and recover from the physical and psychological things that happen during the day. People that believe this theory have looked at a couple of things, and they've looked at the fact that marathon runners tend to sleep more. So if someone runs a marathon, or say over 100 kilometres in a week, those people tend to sleep more than others that don't run at all. The problem with this is we're only talking about massive amounts of extra energy expenditure. People who run every day or are just more physically active actually don't need a lot more sleep at all. So a bit of an issue, but anyway. Adenosine is produced by your cells when we use energy, and this adenosine actually makes you feel sleepy. But we know that when you go to sleep, your body gets rid of this particular waste product, this adenosine, and that's what makes us feel replenished when we wake up the next day. So that kind of makes sense that your body gets rid of this waste product during sleep. We also know that sleep activates the growth hormone, and we know that that's related to metabolism as well. So if you're not getting enough sleep, you don't have enough growth hormone, and you're more likely to be obese. We know that sleep increases immunity to disease, because we know that if people don't sleep, they tend to get sick. We know that we feel better once we've slept, so it increases our alertness. And we also know that sleep is definitely related to the consolidation process in memories. So basically, these are the ideas that support the restorative theory of sleep. I've already spoken about one of the main limitations of this, that only extreme physical activity actually increases sleep time. And also there's an assumption that the body rests during sleep. But we know that there are periods during the night that even though we're sleeping, we're actually very active, such as in REM sleep, our brain is very active. So it kind of doesn't explain that if we're supposed to be resting and recharging, then what are we doing having our brain so active during this period of time? So they're the theories available at the moment, but obviously they still have their issues. Ultimately, we don't know the real purpose of sleep, but we do know that it's essential to our health and our life. basically. So if you are sleep deprived, this means you're not getting enough sleep, and there are two different types of sleep deprivation. So partial sleep deprivation, which means you have some sleep in a 24-hour period, but not enough. Probably happened to you at some stage this week. Usually the night before you go back to school, you tend to not sleep very well, so you needed your 9 or 10 hours and maybe you only got 6. That means that you are having partial sleep deprivation. Total sleep deprivation is going without sleep for an entire 24-hour period, or for several 24-hour periods. There have been quite a few sleep studies done, 2 in particular humans that have done their own studies, and they're Randy Gardner and Peter Tripp, and you've had some articles provided to you about them, so please make sure you go back and read through their experiences. You definitely need to know about the 2 studies on Randy Gardner and Peter Tripp. There have been plenty of animal studies as well. One in particular showed that rats died after 33 days of no sleep. So lots of sleep studies on animals pretty much show that all animals will die without sleep. And before that we'll have a whole heap of issues, usually immunity issues. So what are some of the effects of sleep deprivation? Whether it's full sleep deprivation or partial sleep deprivation, there are always side effects. And the ones that are listed here are the psychological effects. So these tend to be the ones that happen usually to your mind. So cognitive effects, and that should actually say mind in brackets, not mid. So things that will happen to your mind if you don't get enough sleep is you'll have difficulty paying attention and concentrating. You'll probably have poor reasoning, poor decision making, memory problems. You're certainly not going to be creative, and you're probably going to have some distorted perceptions. So you might feel pain more so. Perhaps your perception of time might change, but this tends to only happen after several days of sleep deprivation. We know that your mood will definitely change, so you'll become irritable. Quite often you'll become sad, you'll lack motivation. And we know that there'll be some behavioural issues as well in terms of your performance will just generally slow down, you'll experience some clumsiness, and you often have problems performing simple tasks. Difficult tasks are not affected as much by sleep deprivation. Okay, so it's only the simple tasks that are affected. That's likely to come up in your exam as well. Effects of sleep deprivation. Physiological effects are the physical things that are happening to the body. So the first slide was the psychological effects. Now we're talking about the physical things that happen to your body. So slower physical reflexes. You might have some hand tremors. You might experience droopy eyelids. Please never say droopy eyes on your exam. You cannot have droopy eyes. It is your eyelids that will droop if you're tired. You might have difficulty in focusing your eyes. You might have a heightened level of sensitivity to pain, experience some headaches, and of course experience some low energy levels. You definitely need to know the psychological and the physiological effects of sleep deprivation. It will 100% be on your exam. Chronic sleep deprivation, so sleep deprivation over months or even perhaps years, have been linked to the following disorders. So depression, blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, heartburn, obesity, some forms of cancer, anxiety disorders, and basically accelerated aging. So you can see that sleep is a really important part of your life. So basically, if you do accumulate a sleep debt, this basically means you have a debt from getting insufficient sleep. The good thing about sleep debt is that the debt that you need to pay back doesn't equal the sleep that you lose. So for example, if you are missing 12 hours of sleep throughout your week, that doesn't mean you need 12 extra hours on the weekend to catch up. Quite often what you find is that if you miss one night of sleep, the next couple of nights you'll have an extra hour or 2 sleep, and you will eventually catch up after perhaps 3, 4 or 5 hours extra sleep. So your sleep debt doesn't always basically equal the sleep loss. Most of the sleep deprivation effects that we mentioned earlier on in the physiological and psychological slides, they're temporary. So the good thing about it is that once we do get a good night's sleep, we tend to recover and not have any long-term side effects. So that's with partial or full sleep deprivation, but over a small period of time. We're not talking about chronic sleep problems. So if you have one big night out and have a late night, you will recover and you shouldn't have any long-term side effects. When we sleep after being deprived of REM sleep, we experience something called REM rebound. So if you don't get enough REM sleep one night, the next night you will definitely get more REM sleep. For some reason you need your REM sleep, we don't know why, but if you lose it, you will definitely experience more REM sleep the following night. And we know that we often experience microsleeps when we're tired, which basically means you will fall asleep in the middle of wakeful activity, and you can fall asleep from 3 to 15 seconds. And we know that this has been a bit of a campaign by the Traffic Accident Commission talking about microsleeps and car accidents because they're really quite dangerous, and this is why they promote the idea of power naps to try to avoid these microsleeps. You guys as adolescents are in an interesting cycle at the moment, just due to your age. So we know that at your age you need about 9 to 10 hours sleep per night. But the problem is that melatonin, which should be released at night, which induces your sleepiness, and cortisol, which should be released in the morning to encourage alertness, they're delayed for up to 2 hours for you guys. And this basically means that instead of feeling sleepy at 9 or 10 o'clock, you might not feel sleepy till 11 o'clock or midnight. Instead of feeling awake at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, you might not feel awake till 9 or 10 in the morning. And unfortunately, that's something that you need to deal with. What can you do to deal with it a little bit better? Follow a regular sleep routine. So go to sleep at the same time each night. Even as much as possible on a weekend. Make sure you relax before bed and avoid any stimulating activities. So this means put away your bright screens, no computers, no phones, no music, and just try to relax. And of course, avoid caffeine after 3 p.m. Should definitely help. Okay, so we're at the end of that PowerPoint now, and we're at the end of everything you need to know for your next SAC. So hopefully you get some really good study done between watching these PowerPoints and your SAC, and I wish you all the best. Okay, catch you later.